Hola from EB Landing, and uh, today I'm thinking about. Um, I kind of want to continue, like from my last video, about what it really feels like to be in transition state, because I think the geography of it, um, the geography of it really informs what the experience has to give us. And I was reading more John O'Donohue this morning, and he talks about how transition is probably better described as like being on the threshold of something, or at least being a space. Like, it's not so much a line that you cross. It's not like, oh, I just have to step across this line, and then I've transitioned. I've gone from here to there. I've gone from old to new. Um, and so I've been thinking about how it is really an experience that feels like being out in the wilderness. It feels like you are out in a big, expansive space and you have a lot of ground to cover. Um, Before you're moving on to the new. So it's like this bridge from old to new. And yeah, I like to think about it as a wilderness, as like, and I like wilderness because wilderness has both this feeling of um, fear and excitement to it. Um, and like it's a space of unknown, but deep truth. So there's a lot of mystery and there's also a lot of clarity. So there's like that paradox. At least that is my experience of this time. And what else? Yeah, and I was thinking about like what's so cool about it. And I do spend a fair amount of time like being intrigued by it or frustrated by it. Like yesterday, I think what I really captured was like my frustration with transition time. Like, oh my gosh, aren't we there yet? And like sitting with that. And then I think today I'm thinking more about, well, it's really cool because the whole purpose of the time, right? Like the whole reason you leave something old is because it's not true anymore. It's not in alignment. Or, for whatever reason, it's not a space you want to inhabit anymore. And so you have, like, so you set out on this journey of getting to the new space, and it takes time to reform yourself to get there. And that's what this wilderness space is for. It's this space of figuring out what matters. Um, and that actually takes time. And so here's what's cool about this space that I really find very generative is I'm actually like physically getting in touch with the space. It's like, so here's what's funny about it. What's really funny to me is how little I care about things that I used to care a lot about. So it really creates this space for being hyper tuned into what matters, what's true. Like, there is no small talk kind of living in this space. Like, I feel like every day, while not outwardly productive, is hugely inwardly productive. And there is nothing trivial. Like, I feel like it's such a space of meaning and depth and richness and like big talk conversation. And like, bottom line, if it doesn't have to do with um like stewarding my life and being true to who I am and and being focused on things that really, really, truly matter. Like, I'm not interested. So for example, like, I was just thinking about this because I was thinking back over the past like 6 months or so, and I was like, what have I actually been doing? Like, how would I articulate what's been going on? And what's interesting is what's not in the space, or like what I'm not doing maybe that I used to do. So for example, like I don't I'm not very social. And when I choose to be, it's in spaces like super resonant spaces where people can meet me where I am. So I've noticed that I just like I don't have as much interest in being like lightheartedly or like low stakes social, if you will. Um, yeah, like I find it very hard to be with people like where I have to make small talk, or like I think I normally do. That's sort of how I operate, but especially so. I have like zero tolerance for bullshit, small talk, gossip, like any of that. Like just I can't. Um my leg fell asleep. Okay. I gotta shift. Um like other things are like I that I used to care a lot about, like my food. Like I used to put a lot more thought into like what am I eating? Like um things like that, or like where am I going? And I find that like small scale decisions just don't matter for me. In fact, they create decision fatigue. So I've been noticing, whereas I normally like to have a lot of variety in my diet, I'm really happy to eat the exact same thing over and over again. Um, so that's pretty interesting because I never thought I'd be in that space, and I don't really like to spend a lot of time cooking either. I used to love to spend a long time cooking, and I just don't care. It doesn't seem very important to me. Like so, I don't know what else. Yeah, I'm not as concerned about being on top of things. Like I screw things up now. Like I get appointment times wrong. Uh like and it's just like okay, messed that up. I wasn't on time, or like whatever. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's not that I'm like being rude or trying to be a jerk. It's just like there are important things going on. That is the whole point of all of this, is like standing in the beauty of a space that is created in life that allows you um, hyper focus on what matters. And so what I'm finding that is, so I just talked about like the isn't, but the is like I'm in this space of deep truth and exploration about who I've been and who I want to be. So I'm revisiting everything, like, and really looking at the past through the lens of like, I used to be a PM, so it's like I'm almost doing a retro, and I'm like, oh, what went well, what could have been better. Um, but I'm really asking myself like very um very deep questions about what I value, what matters and what doesn't, how I want to behave um, and react in certain situations, what I choose to prioritize, um, who I want to spend time with, to be, what I want to stand for. I mean, those are like big things. I wish I could think of some like more concrete examples of how it actually plays out. But it takes a long time. Like I had a great conversation with a friend yesterday, and she reminded me of something very important, which is that um, you can know the truth about something, like you can have insight, but it takes time to rewire your behavior patterns. It takes time to for your neural pathways to reset. And so that's exactly why a transition time is not like jumping over a line. I mean, like jumping over a line can be a commitment. There could be many lines within transition that you're leaping over, or edges you're crossing over. Um, Edges, which I would define as uncomfortable action required to fulfill a desired vision. Um, but the point is that it does take time, and I'm just so I don't even think I can see it completely yet, and I will look back on this time and be like, wow, I get why it took so long, and I wish I hadn't spent so much time being impatient about it being over. Oh, and that's the other thing. I had this realization today, and probably anybody who's been through huge transition and paid attention to it would be like, oh, of course, Caitlin. But I had this moment of knowing, like, this isn't, like, really, we're, to a certain extent, I mean, there are big transitions in life, and then there are, like, little ones and medium ones, and all different scales and flavors. And And so the big ones require more of us, I think, than the little ones. And I had this realization that we're always in a state of transition. Like, the only constant is change. And to a certain extent, like, I'm actually learning a way of operating fluidly in the world. I've been operating really rigidly in my life in a lot of ways. And what this time is teaching me um, is how to hold myself anytime I'm checking in, anytime I check in and say, it's not true for me to be where I am anymore. I have to move. I have to move my being to get myself to another place, right? Like that's change and transition, and that's going from old to new. And it could happen on a micro scale, it could happen on a macro scale, but it's learning. It's like I'm learning the process for it now. And rather than just so much of my life, I think it's really required to be self authoring in life. Like previously, I would just come up against things and be like, wow, I don't like this, but I'm not really sure what to do about it. Or um, I'm scared about what it means for me to change it or shift it. Um, and I see that it's not so much about the objective reality of what's shifting, but what's shifting within me. So I feel like I'm way too esoteric right now about all of this. Um, Anywho, the wilderness of transition, as you're moving towards creating the new, yay, it's such a beautiful time of realizing what really matters, and what doesn't. It's like you're going through the process of sorting what goes and what stays, and what needs to be totally reformed and built all over again. And so yeah, it's very important for living the essence of who we are, and living true lives of yeah, what do I want to say here? I don't know. Um, yeah, I'm excited to see what else opens up. And I think from where I'm standing now, I'm having a real shift around, well, this isn't a self contained space, actually. It's not like this transition time isn't this neat sequestered period and then like I'm on the other side, it's like no, it's extremely expansive and spacious and fluid and will follow me through my whole life. It will be ever present. I think that's what I'm trying to articulate. Rather than being like the geography of the space, which feels very formless and all over the place at times, actually informs how our experience of it and how we actually informs our experience of it and how we live through it. So, an ever present gift that can be a little sassy and a little hard to manage at times, but also very, very life giving. And I'm excited for what's next from here.